This video is brought to you by Core Gun Belts, the ultimate ADC belt. Check them out at coreessentials.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. We definitely appreciate the support. So we got Jesse and Nick over here from Practically Tactical. We're going to do a couple of videos, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you guys got any comments, definitely put it in the comment section below. So let us know where you guys, your website and all that stuff, your social media stuff.
Pretty much Practically Tactical, everything. So youtube.com/Practically Tactical, practicallytactical.com, Practically Tactical podcast on iTunes, Practically Tactical on Facebook, Practically Tactical on Instagram, Practac Jesse on Instagram, Practac Show on Twitter. I don't know. We could just take over and we'll mention all of our sponsors. We can just do all.
Yeah, you guys are good. So I'll put links in the description below so you guys could check that out. All right, so we're talking about everyday carry medical, and this is interesting because this is something. Actually, I was watching a chat from you guys, and one of you guys said the other day, and I think it was just recently, you guys were talking about this. One of you guys said, and I can't remember who it was, but it said medical supplies, you could bring it anywhere. And I really never thought about it that way, because obviously carrying a gun, you can go into the post office or the courthouse, but you could bring medical supplies anywhere. And legitimate, it was like I was watching you guys talking. It was all you three and maybe somebody else. And I was like, whoa, that makes a lot of sense. You could bring medical anywhere, especially with this thing with Vegas and the active shooter situation. I'm sure there could have been, people could have done stuff. I actually got personal experience with this topic right here. So what do you guys carry? How do you guys do it? You guys, I know, Nick, you got some type of system. I watched a video that you were doing where you carry something. You want to talk about it?
Yeah. So I've actually now converted Jesse to the way I carry, and I got that from Jeff. So I think the important thing to talk about here is, you hit the nail on the head there, JH, of you can take medical everywhere. So I have flown all this year with everything. So that's right here. So this is my frog.pro. I think they call it SFD. I don't know. It's their ankle wrap. So everything you see right here, I have flown. I've went through security with. I take this thing everywhere with me. I put this on my ankle. I wear it. I forget it. And it just goes with me. So I'll go over what I carry before, but I think something that's important to think about is you talk about like Las Vegas, any other type of shooting, or here's the important thing to talk about is I think all of us, right, is we all have our like in our mind of like if we ever have to draw our gun and use our concealed carry gun, and it's going to be this awesome thing and doves fly and we're going to burn down this bad guy who deserved it, right? The problem is though, is that dude really doesn't have and operate by the same rules that we do. He has no problem shooting you or anybody else around you. He doesn't care. Those of us that carry concealed, obviously we care about people around us. So it's not just, well, you carry medical for yourself because let's be honest, no one else is going to carry medical, but also what about, hey, maybe you're with your wife and kids somewhere, you burn this guy down, but your kid or wife took a round. That's an absolutely viable thing that can happen. They don't necessarily care who they hit, do they? They just want to throw rounds, right? We care as concealed carriers. So we need to have this medical and the training to go along with it to be able to help people. That's really what it is. You carry medical for yourself because nobody else is going to have medical. Look at Las Vegas, for example. But then, hey, if you make it through unscathed, great. But then, people around you might need help. So that's the reasons for it. I mean, I think the dumbest, or not dumbest, the most dumbed down way of describing it is if you carry something to put holes in people, you should probably carry something to clog up those holes. Mm-hmm. So here's what I carry. I carry a tourniquet cat 7, the newest generation in here. I have combat gauze. I have full-size shears, not required. I carry them anyways. I have 2 chest seals. I have gloves. And then I add this in. I have a little Streamlight. What is this? The ProTac 1 AAA for the fact of if, again, night is half of the day generally. If I want to carry a little light that I can put in my mouth so I have 2 hands free if it's dark. So that's why I add in a small little light. Mm-hmm. Just so I can go, I have 2 hands available and have light on what I'm doing. So that's what I carry. That's what I carried in. If you're interested in looking for these, they're made in Italy. Find a U.S. distributor because you'll pay a ton in shipping. So find just a U.S. distributor. They're kind of hard to find because we've been selling an absolute ton of these. All medical supplies have kind of went through the roof after Vegas because obviously it's an unfortunate incident, but people are learning like, hey, how many lives could be saved. You look at the actually just the actual official report just came out on the Denver, Colorado Batman movie shooting. That one dude, I can't remember his name. His name's not important, honestly. And medical's a discussion in there. Some lives could have been saved had people had medical and or medical training. The U.S. military, me and Greg did a show on this. He's an EMS in and around Austin. The U.S. military has actually spent a ton of money on doing studies and information on medical. They actually have one. They collected data from the Israeli Defense Forces on different types of tourniquets, how they work, their actual rate. You have to find the show for the links to those. I don't have those offhand. They did, how well effective tourniquets were on kids. I think that was solely done out of Iraq, I want to say. Here's the deal: is if you have a commercial dedicated product, you're going to save a life probably. If you have the training and not the actual products, you're going to do really, really good as well. So it's really a two fork attack on that. If you have the products and you have the training, you're going to save lives. And that's, I don't know how much money the U.S. Army spent on these studies, but I'm sure it's an absolute ton of money, but it's data that we can now take and use. That's kind of an overview. Jesse, you got anything else there?
Yeah. So first off, like Nick touched on, man, training is the most important, right? There's so many myths out there with medical, and it's honestly like one of the most simplest things, there's classes all over. Obviously having a basic CPR class that, the YMCA or your local Red Cross puts on is, again, you could save somebody's life with just that information. Going a step further, obviously you get into some of your TCCC, casualty care, actual doing bleeding and like bleeding control and things like that. And, here's the deal. Obviously right now, most of us are not deployed in theater, right? We're not overseas. We are in a local area. And even if you are super rural, usually flight time response is somewhere in like the 15-minute ballpark, right? And obviously, from combat, at that time, they were giving you like the golden hour, right? If you got guys to the cache within the hour, most of the time they were probably going to survive. And we're talking rifle rated wounds, right? So talking about like local, what you're going to deal with here, obviously EMS is only a call away. So when talking about training, right, like most guys, you'll hear some of the myths, the huge ones out there, right? I'm going to make some people mad right now, is like tampons, as carried as gauze, and we've definitely done a show with Kerry Davis of Dark Angel Medical where he shows you like how much you get out of a tampon, how much you get out of a pack of gauze, right? And what it takes to actually stop bleeding with direct pressure and gauze. Next thing you'll hear is like improvised medicine, right? I'll just use my belt or something like that. Here's the thing. Especially concealed carriers, we're using more rigid belts than most, right? And you're not going to be able to get a tourniquet. You're not going to get occlusion, being able to get it tight enough with that. Second is, how are you going to get a windlass in there and actually crank that thing down? Because that's what usually actually shuts off the bleeding, right? And again, yes, having that knowledge is definitely helpful, right? But it's also helpful to have a dedicated product on you, especially when it's as cheap as it is to carry and actually use it for that purpose. Again, like Nick said, being, carrying obviously what you need for what you think you're going to get into. I'll see a lot of guys' kits that got decompression needles, things like that. Here's the thing, like tension pneumothorax, it's an onset thing, right? It usually takes a little bit to set in. I don't even know like the legality behind shoving a 12 gauge needle in a guy's chest or whatever to get it out. Airway as well, like carrying nasal pharyngeals and things like that. Usually, again, you're talking a 10-minute medical response, and that's a pretty long time in, especially super rural or suburban areas. So what I want to be able to do is stop immediate blood loss, right? Like femoral bleeds, articular bleeding that is like shooting out. Again, first thing I want to do is be able to get occlusion on there, but I want to have a product, especially like a tourniquet. And, pretty much what I would recommend out of tourniquets is, like Nick said, the Cats, Cat 7, Cat 6 are still good. And then the SWAT T wide is another pretty one, or a soft T wide. That's another pretty good tourniquet out there. Actually, Nick found some issues when working in like pretty harsh environments, right? Like a really sandy environment with the soft T wide, but Cat 7s from my experience have just been good to go. So I want to be able to stop major blood loss, right? And that's pretty much the most important thing to me. So I carry, like Nick said, I've actually got a tough product. So this is, you're not going to have as hard of time finding a tough products, right? They're here, they're local. So, this is their ankle kit. I've kind of modified mine to be able to fit, like Nick said, a pack of combat gauze. I've got a Cat 7. I've got some more hemostatic gauze right here, a pack of nitrite gloves, and that's about it, right? I carry it on my ankle every day. I think it's a really comfortable way. For a long time, I would get away with just carrying a Cat 7 and a pack of combat gauze in my back right pocket or my back left pocket, and that's how I carried it forever. The problem that I found with that is I was just wearing through materials a lot faster. Combat gauze is good for 5 years if it's not exposed to the elements. I don't know how long tourniquets are good for, but I'm guessing a few years as well if they're not exposed to the elements, right? So the problem with having it in your back pocket is it's exposed to a lot more things. It's getting a lot more wear and tear, a lot more fray. I'd wear through the packs of gauze pretty quickly. Every about 6 months, I'd have to be replacing that, and that's $42 a pop, right? The Cat 7s are about $30, somewhere in there. And here's the thing, dude, buy reputable, right? There's tons of good companies out there like Lone Star Medics, obviously Kerry Davis, Dark Angel Medical, there's the North American Rescue. You want to buy from a legit company because we see it all the time. There's tons of fakes out there on Amazon, and people would be like, well, what's the big deal of buying a fake tourniquet for $10 cheaper? And here's the thing, this is life-saving equipment, right? You would hate to be cranking down on that windlass and all of a sudden something snap off and now you can't get that direct pressure. And they're pretty decent looking fakes, until you get into how they're actually made and what they're using to actually secure the materials and things like that. So definitely buy reputable. Like I said, this is cheap learning knowledge, especially if you're a concealed carrier. You're talking about carrying a gun for a 1% chance of ever getting into an altercation with that, right? Your percent of using medical equipment is so much higher than that. I mean, think car accidents, anything that you can roll up on a day-to-day, just having a little bit of knowledge. And I mean, it's as simple as 10-minute medical, right? My daughter, for instance, 7 years old, knows how to apply a tourniquet properly. It's that easy to learn. So this is something that you can literally go to YouTube, watch videos, from a reputable source, like I said, North American Rescue or something like that, to where you can figure out how to put a tourniquet on pretty easily. And but otherwise, like I said, Lone Star Medics, Kerry Davis of Dark Angel Medical are phenomenal medical classes. Get in there, and same with their kits, right? Like a lot of people say it takes up too much room, but then you make nice small compact kits that fit in your back pocket that you can get, hide away. So.
Yeah. One thing that I would say is, because I remember this when I work at this dispatch center as a military police officer. Once you call there, because a couple of guys are making comments here. Once you called, they also are able to give you some advice on what to do as well. So, because I remember, people will call and be like, okay, this is what's going on. And they had a list where they start saying, do this, put pressure here, or do that. It's kind of nice that, if you called, you have some type of gear. It will probably be surprising to them that you have some type of gear to help out. But if you have the gear and you have some information, 911, and you have some training, I mean, it could definitely save somebody's life for sure.
I think the important thing here too is, again, the training aspect. There's classes all over. You can go get all the basic stuff really easy. You can take medical classes that are pretty affordable. They're all over. It's not hard to carry this stuff. It's not expensive. And let's be honest, you are a million times more likely to use medical than a gun. Yeah. So if we're preparing for the worst case scenario, we should probably also have this as well. I'll say another part is setting your gear up for success is another part thing. So Jesse just got, I took this class a month or two ago. Jesse just took it, vehicle CQB with William Petty. There's a drill in his class to where you get done with the drill and he just says, all right. And he picks, it's a 2-person drill. He says, all right, your partner's down with femoral bleed, go. And then you have to take care of that person, whatever it might be. And then guess what? You got to drag them. So physical fitness is a huge thing. Of course, the dude I get, of course, I'm not in great physical shape. The dude I get is like 6'6", 280, and I got to drag this guy across the range. So knowing how to pick up somebody and drag them is an also helpful thing. But setting up your gear is incredibly important. So because we saw this at the class, Jesse, in your class, and my class, people still have their tourniquets in the original wrap. The problem is there's blood and there's all over, and you're getting your knee in there on the femoral artery stop occlusion real quick while you're getting your gear out. There's probably gonna be blood all over. Imagine opening up a plastic sealed bag with your hands being wet. Mm-hmm. It's not gonna be a good day. So I thought, you know what? Let's do this live. How about I apply a tourniquet to myself on the go, like right here, because I know my tourniquet's set up for success. So here we go. Let's say my offhand is down, right? So let's go at this.
Right. And that's another good point is like, what if this is self-aid, right? And now you're trying to rip open this pack that you've never got before, unfold this brand new tourniquet. Because again, there's plenty of videos out there on folding technique, but.
There we go. What? 10 seconds, if less.
Yeah.
I can now windlass this down. I don't want to go anymore because I'm already to the hurting pain point. But setting up your tourniquet for success is where it's at. You got to have it ready to go. So for example, on my cat, it's already looped through. So we have that looped through. If you have one of the older gens that has 2 loops, just loop it through one. It's fine. Have it set up for success. And then what I do on the end here is it's folded up to make it easy to grab. So when I grab, then you got to make sure that on a tourniquet, you go high and tight. So you go high and tight here, get it all the way up, right? And then you tighten this thing down as hard as you can. You pull on it, and then just right to the windlass right there. So you got to make sure you get that down. But having it set up for success, because if you didn't, imagine one-handed feeding this through the little loop here. It's gonna be hard. So make sure that if you're carrying it, you have it set up for success and ready to rock and roll. That's an important part as well. It's fun to do that live.
Sure.
Yeah. That was pretty cool. 2 points for you.
Well, here's the thing, right? So again, we've made huge advancements in medical since, the OIF. So GWAT, we've made huge leaps in medical training. Like you said, we were talking before the show, 04, you went out with like pressure dressings, and they were talking about like grab a stick and tighten it down 2 fingers, right? Because what they say, if you throw a tourniquet on, that dude's probably going to lose that limb, right? And that goes back to like World War II, where guys were sitting with tourniquets for hours, days, whatever, and they were losing limbs. Again, we go to advancements in medical technology and everything. William April, I took his Unthinkable class recently, and where he lives in New Orleans, there's a hospital there that has a policy. If you show up alive, you'll leave alive. Right? Doesn't matter how bad off you are showing up. If you show up with a pulse, they will make sure that you live. They have a 0% death rate. So think about that. How far we've gone in medical, right? So, a lot of people will say like, you can't apply a tourniquet, and that's absolutely not the case. Again, if to stop, especially severe bleeding, right? If you can't get it with pressure and you can't get it with elevation, the next step should be a tourniquet, because again, the timeline that it's probably going to sit on there is so short. But we're also using modern tourniquets, right? They're the proper thickness. They have the windlass on there and everything. It's not these makeshift things that we had back in the day where you're sitting for hours or days at a time. So you're safe for quite a while with it. And again, most of them you'll see that have a time mark, and again, that goes into training, right? Taking note of the time that you put it on, where the placement is of it, and all of that. But again, it's just, keeping up to date. Like there's a lot of fallacies out here with medical. Again, I brought up some of the myths earlier of like carrying tampons or your belt or stuff like that. And I understand bushcraft medicine is definitely a viable option, right? It's definitely good knowledge to have, because not all the time you're going to be able to have all those tools on you. But again, like I said earlier, if you have a purpose-built kit, a purpose-built tool to actually solve that problem, you're going to be able to solve it a million times faster, a million times better. And again, it could save somebody's life, or it could save your own life, your child's life. Like, That's all pretty important.
I was going to make this this point real quick because we could talk about this for a long time, but you got to be secure before you start applying medical. I mean, you got to be safe. We saw that happening in Vegas, where people were shooting down. The guy was shooting down. I mean, bending over and starting putting a tourniquet on a person right there may not be a good idea. Obviously, the idea will be to leave that kill zone, go into a place that is semi-secure in a way, and then apply that medical stuff. So sometimes you got to do what you got to do, but you want to be kind of safe before you start applying tourniquet, before you start assessing. You got to leave the kill zone. And I know we could talk about multiple what if this, what if that, you know what I'm saying? But I just wanted to make that point.
Well, I think another point to go off of that, right off of yours, is like Las Vegas. Remember too, because somebody like, well, you know, medical. I live in suburban, you know, I live in Philadelphia or whatever big city, and you know, we have a 5-minute response rate. That's awesome. That's going to help save a lot of lives. The issue is when you get into some sort of active shooter situation or where the scene is not safe. EMT medical are not coming in until the scene is cleared. So all these dudes with all these amazing medical stuff that can pump people full of drugs and keep people alive, they're not coming in until the police radio in and say, hey, it's safe for you to come in. So that can, depending on the type of situation, that can be 10 minutes, that can be an hour, that can be 2 hours. So it's something to think about. Again, for carrying medical is if it's, you know, if you're having the worst day at work, literally, and something goes off, until that scene is safe, medical is not coming in. So, you know, Will talks about, you know, what's your responsibility in a gunfight? Everything. So that's taking care of the problem, medical, communication. There's this whole aspects to this stuff that you need to be able to handle. And, you know, still another quote from him is, the first time you do it, it shouldn't be for all the marbles. It's easy to talk about it. But obviously, JH, you've had to do a lot of this stuff. It's, you know, it's on demand, instant, know how to do, isn't it? It's not like, okay, we're going to have some preparatory time here and everything's going to be going our way. And we're going to take care of him and get him taken care of. It's probably chaotic. It's crazy. And it's stressful, and you got to know what you're doing. Yeah. It's all fun and games to sit here and do it in front of a computer like I did until I have a gun in my hand. Could be another bad dude. I got people running around screaming. It's probably a real heck of an event that is probably pretty crazy.
Anything you want to add up, Jesse? Anything else?
No, man. I think we covered it.
Yeah, this is good conversation, man. I love talking about this because, you know, and I know you guys doing your channel, and I do here too. I tell people all the time, I'm not a gun channel, just, you know, a channel that I like to talk about things because this is important. You know, typically in the gun community, all we see is what's the next gun, and we all know that, you know, medical is important, training is important, and all that stuff. So I'm loving what you guys are doing with all the training, man. So it's pretty cool.
All right. Can I tell a little bit of a story real quick to throw in? I think you'll enjoy this. So it was at Advanced Vehicle CQB. Petty has what's called Performance on Demand. If you go to his Facebook page, you can watch the live video up of I think he was at Michigan State Police. And so he does a smaller kind of civilian thing for it. And I volunteered to be the role player, which I've now learned. If you take one of his classes, don't volunteer to be a role player. I was the downed person. So it was, excuse me, 2 people roll up, you know, hey, your family, your friend or whatever. It's this like massive car jam or whatever calls, and you got to go save him. And he drives up to the range, you know, 60 miles per hour, slams on the brakes, and you got to jump out. There's also a bad guy, like an active shooter, whatever, that's in there. So they got to take care of him, and then they have to roll up on me, you know, so they're fighting him. I'm sitting here screaming of like, help me, save me. You know, why aren't you coming? Why is nobody coming to save me? I'm going to die. I'm bleeding, you know, all this stuff. And they take care of the active shooter thing. And they come to me, and then I go completely unresponsive. And then Petty's like, hey, he has a, you know, right or left femoral, or he did a lot of my right leg, which is unfortunate because it's still bruised from people sticking their knees in it to stop or to get occlusion at that point in time. So then they have to do that. And then he makes them makeshift tourniquets on the fly in this. There was 9 cars laid out on the range. So they have to make a tourniquet. So they have to make the strap. They have to make the windlass. They have to make the tie down for the windlass to keep it on. And then they had to drag me out. The crappy thing was, so he would make them load me into the car. And again, I'm not helping them. And so I'm, I'm 175 pounds of, muscle here.
Just like
so they drag me into the car. He drives 10 feet, says, "Oh, the car died in the gunfight. Get him out." So then they have to get me back out and then drag me like another 50 yards. But it's all about that performance on demand thing. Having the training, being able to do it, and if nothing's going your way and you don't have all the things, you can still solve that problem. But it was a super fun time doing that. And yeah, everybody went to my belt except for one team. And then again, I carry it's a concealed carry belt, so it's super thick, so it doesn't work. So if your plan is like, well, I got a belt, dude, it's probably not going to work.
And like Chase Jenkins says, man, all bleeding stops eventually, right? Like whether you stop it or you just bleed out and die. So
then the whole time too, Petty has fake blood, so he's spraying my pants, he's spraying them in the face, he's spraying me in the face. I'm like, come on, dude, but he's just spraying away, yelling at him and upping that stress level. So yeah, to steal his quote, the first time you do stuff shouldn't be for all the marbles.
Oh wow.
It was a fun time, except being dragged around. And then, of course, like people took my belt off or would loosen it. Then they would drag me, and it was like this dump truck. So I just collected like 50 pounds of sand. I still have sand coming out when I take a shower.
Stick around. We got a lot of videos coming out. Definitely stick around. I'll see you guys in the next one. And as always, God is in control.